Welcome back to the IDP Heat Seekers Fantasy Football Program. I am your host, Roto Heat Brad. You can find me over on Twitter at the same handle. Joined, as always, by two of the greatest minds the world has ever known. Austin at Infamous IDP. How are you, my friend? Don't shake your head no at me, Kraig Reith. And it's not your turn yet, so you just hold it. Austin, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's Monday again, which is always good and sometimes not good. But we're here tonight and we're ready for a mock draft. It's going to be a great time.
Somebody's got a case of the Mondays. Speaking of somebody's got a case of the Mondays, Kraig Reith, how are you, my brother?
Fear the deer.
All right, so like he said, tonight we are going to be doing a rookie mock draft. This is going to be an offensive, defensive rookie mock draft. It is going to be 4 rounds. It's going to be glorious. We're doing a 1 QB, and just to make sure we keep it simple for everybody, we're just going to kind of do basics. You know, your 2 DLs, 2 linebackers, 2 DBs, a flex position. You know, keep it very simple. Going to be 1 QB. We are joined by 12 amazing individuals that are jumped in to help us out with the mock. So with that being said, we're going to kick it off and just let the conversation kind of go as it goes. We're going to start this thing off with Austin. You are at the 1-1 pick, so you get to start with not drafting defense because defense doesn't typically go this early. Kraig, have you done any rookie drafts yet? What have you seen?
I haven't done any solo rookie drafts. I've only done mock drafts. None of my leagues, none of my dynasty leagues have rookie drafts yet, just scheduled. So, no. I mean, and actually none of the mock drafts that I've done have had IDP either, so this will be fun.
Yeah, we typically don't start a lot of my drafts that I'm in until this upcoming weekend, but I have had a couple already go. And I drafted the first IDP at Aiden Hutchinson at the 2-6 and a 14-team pretty standard IDP. But that was only because I had no other picks until like the 4th round. Oh, I had to get my line right.
Yeah.
So I did that at 2-6, you know, and then I started the rush. Like all of a sudden, then kind of late second, everybody started grabbing IDP. So that's what I've seen mostly happen so far is mid to late second. You start seeing the big names go, and it really has been the 2 drafts that I've seen. It's been Aiden Hutchinson as the first IDP taken. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes here. And our boy Eagle Dan, connected to Front Yard, is either with us or not with us, but we will see. I'm gonna tag him and see if he is in here with us or if he's gonna hold out on us.
Well, that's all right. I mean, for the offense, for the first part of this, I think we'll be all right either way.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Who's been the 102 that you guys have seen the most of?
It's been
All right.
it's been 2 different. I saw Burks and I saw Drake London as the 102 after Brees Hall. So I've seen 2. There we go. Now we see Kenneth Walker. There we go.
I've seen a lot of Kenneth Walker.
People are hype about it. I mean, I guess it just depends on how you feel about Chris Carson, if that neck injury is going to keep him out or not.
Yep.
We'll see.
They're going to run the ball. It's going to be something.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can work in multiple running backs. I mean, that Seattle offense is predicated on that, and especially when you look at what they've got at quarterback, they're going to have to run the ball a lot more. You don't have Russell Wilson, and you don't even have a third.
You don't believe in Geno Smith, and you don't believe in Drew Lock? Come on, bro.
I have Drew Lock shares. If anybody on any of my leagues is listening, you're more than welcome to have them, but I'm not super excited about Drew Lock or Geno Smith in that offense.
Well, who are you excited about in the first round at the end there, Brad? Who would you like to get so people can snipe you live?
Snipe me live. I've been going my sleep. So if you checked out rotoheat.com, I posted my sleeper article today. Either of those running backs that I posted, Damian Pierce or Tyler Algier, are kind of guys that I look at the back half of the first because I really do like the position they're in. I like the player going in. You know, I wrote an article about BYU last summer over on RotoHeat, and I was all sorts of on the Tyler Algier train then. So why not now when he goes to Atlanta? They got rid of Mike Davis, and all he's got in front of him is a couple of journeymen and Cordero Patterson and Damian Williams. It's like, why not? I mean, and feel free to snipe away. If you want to take those guys, I'll draft Pickens or Mechie or any of these other guys that I like that are right there at the turn.
You're taking a quarterback. We all know it.
Well, Detroit didn't draft a quarterback, so how would I take a quarterback?
Well, if you only take Detroit Lions, you're going to be taking IDP pretty early here.
Well, if Jamison Williams would have fallen to me, but you've all of a sudden become a big Lions fan, so you had to go and snipe me there. So we're not really seeing anything different. Austin, what do you think about how things have gone so far, at least in the first, 10, 11 picks?
Pretty standard. A little surprised to see Jamison Williams go before Chris Olave, although you're kind of just matter of preference there. I do like Jamison Williams a lot, but I'm a pretty big fan of Chris Olave too. Sky Moore, I mean, everyone's really high on him. He's getting bumped up quite a bit just from his landing spot, and kind of the same here with James Cook at 111. So everything in front of that though looks pretty on par with what I've seen. Kenneth Walker at the 102, like we already talked about, and then Drake London ahead of Garrett Wilson, and Burks kind of being that third guy in that group of three.
Yeah, I didn't think Watson was going to be there, so I guess I had to swoop him up, even though that is the earliest I've seen Cook go. I've not seen him go in the first round yet. How do you feel about all that, Craig?
I understand it. It kind of feels sort of CEH-y to me, in that, the guy that was taken maybe a little bit earlier, as far as, number of running back taken in the draft, and a lot of people had thought going to a high-powered offense. Kind of feel I like James Cook as a prospect. I think he's going to have to earn his role. I mean, it's Devin Singletary to beat out, but he had a nice, really playoff run there for the Bills, and I don't expect anyone to really win it out. It'll be another mess, I feel, but I get why people like it.
And speaking of liking it, a tight end at the 2-1.
Yeah, I think I just took who I think is the best player available. As a prospect, I like Trey McBride a lot, and I think I like him. I could have gone David Bell there probably, and keep in mind this is a one quarterback league, so I don't feel like I really need to make any hasty decisions on quarterback, especially not at the front side of the second round. So for me, I just felt like Trey McBride was the best pick right there. Honestly, I mean, anybody else that I'm looking at, I'm probably reaching on. I'm not really, Wandale,
for sure.
He's kind of all right. And then I guess I could have gone defense there if I wanted, but I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest. So if anybody's watching this show, you're looking for
I don't
IDP,
recommend it either.
yeah, if you're looking for IDP help, take that as don't draft IDP that early.
Never draft IDP that early. But I do got to shout out Zach and Caesar, my boys from Large League. They were going to join up and help, but they're at least watching and hanging out and busting my balls again because I continue to hate Drew Lock. It's true. I don't like Drew Lock. I haven't liked him, but somehow he's on my roster. I think that's collusion in my mind. Look at that. We finally see some IDP go here in the middle of the second round. So, Craig, why don't you fill us in about Devin Lloyd, about the value you get there at 2.5 with him? Oh, well, no, we'll go to Austin. You're picking right now. You pick. Austin, you tell him.
Yeah. Devin Lloyd, he's going to be great. I think he's going to be one of the two starting linebackers there in Jacksonville that are going to see the most as far as snap counts. We saw Chad Muma go there as well, and that was pre-draft one of my favorite linebackers personally, but I don't like the landing spot for him. But for Devin Lloyd, I think it's a great landing spot. He should have plenty of opportunity to do exactly what he does best. I think they'll use Aluaquan to fill the gaps a little bit more, and use Devin Lloyd as the mover of the defense, guy who can run sideline to sideline, play some coverage, and still be able to make those big plays. So I love Devin Lloyd, and you know what? Just looking at the picks that come after him, I don't think it's a bad spot to take him. I mean, if you're not big on Spiller, I'm personally not. If you don't want to go with a quarterback, if you kind of don't like what you're seeing at receiver and running back because everything's kind of dried up, you're getting to that tier where you really don't know exactly how great these guys are going to be. Go ahead and take that great linebacker, which is Devin Lloyd.
They very quickly are turning that Jacksonville defense into a nightmare for opposing teams. I mean, they've got, they drafted 2 strong linebackers. They've got 2 strong edge pieces potentially if Trayvon Walker is what they think he is. I mean, Craig, how do you feel not only about the Jacksonville defense, but just in general what you're seeing here in the second round?
So in terms of Jacksonville, I kind of feel it's a mess. Foy is going to be there, and they just signed him to that big deal. Lloyd they took in the first round, so clearly I think those 2 are probably going to start. But then it sort of turns into a mess. and they took Muma in the third. I think he's going to play, but they really haven't supported the three fantasy relevant linebackers at one time. So how that all shakes out, it's going to be really interesting. But I just wish they hadn't taken that that other rookie linebacker that we liked because I think it's just going to be a mess fantasy wise. But real life, I think it'll be good. And we're starting to see these defensive players come off the ball here. Brad, you even took one, although I think you're probably sad that Hutchinson and Hamilton didn't make it to you.
I know. While I was looking, so I saw Hamilton sitting there, and then I knew Hutchinson was gone. But in my mind, for me, when I've got my big board, and I think our rankings are all updated on rotoheat.com, I think I have Hutchinson first, and then I think Thibodeau's right there with him, along with Lloyd. So Hamilton, I think, is just a little bit behind, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. I love all these players, though. I really don't hate getting any of them at the back end of the second round because they're all potential, cores of your fantasy team because they all have really high upside. I know a lot of folks were knocking Kyle Hamilton, but I think he can be a strong producer. I mean, even today you're seeing news that teams are contacting Baltimore about Chuck Clark, and are they already looking at moving on from a safety so that Hamilton can kind of be a day one guy? Maybe. I mean, obviously I don't run the front office, and but they have a wealth of riches at safety, so why not?
I think personally they're going to end up keeping him at least to the start of the season, Bruce, with the issues that they had with that secondary staying healthy and guys coming back from injuries. Chuck Clark wore the green dot for that defense. I think almost all of last year. He's a leader. The coaching staff loves him. So he's on a reasonable contract. I don't know why they would get rid of him unless they're completely sure that Hamilton is just going to be willing to take over that role, or I guess more be able to take over that role. I don't think he's there yet. But again, that's going to be another fantasy mess. If you're looking, Humphrey was used all over that defensive backfield. Then you're having Marcus Williams, Clark, and now Hamilton. Great for NFL, a little bit more of a headache for us.
So I like it. We've got Jordan hanging out. Love him. Questioning the Hassan Haskins pick at the late second. I mean, is it safe to say that it's Hassan Haskins season here soon, Austin, or is it just a depth play and maybe a little bit of an early grab for a guy like that? What do you think about him?
Maybe the guy owns Derrick Henry. I don't know. No, since this is a mock. Haskins, I don't even know if he's being drafted inside the top 4 rounds. Maybe. I have to just kind of see what the board looks like, but certainly not in the second round. Although, if you like the prospect, like who's to say at this point in the draft, right? So I'm not just going to beat this pick over the head because at the end of the day, like you start getting into this tier of players, you're not really sure. And if there's something that you see, maybe you're a film guy and you go, hey, I really like the way this guy plays. I like what he does. I think that he should be drafted a little bit higher, then feel free to take him. But I personally probably would not.
As a Michigan man, I believe in Hassan Haskins for sure.
There you go.
It just depends on how you feel about Derrick Henry, though. I mean, when Henry was out last year, obviously we saw Deonta Foreman get some run and look usable in that offense. But Derrick Henry doesn't get hurt that often. I mean, so was last year an anomaly? Who knows? Speaking of who knows, our boy Eagle Dan took one of our favorite players in the draft, Nakobe Dean, who was a guy who slid. Craig, how do you feel about Dean in Philly? Do you think an early third round pick is worthy of a high potential guy like that, but who is hurt currently?
So I think they said that he's gotten as much of a clean bill of health as he can get right now from the Eagles, and he's taking part in their rookie camp sort of stuff. So that's certainly promising. I don't think they would have taken him even in the third round if they thought there was something crazy serious. We saw that with Clark falling to Dallas, I think, in the 5th. So I really like, we talked about it pre-draft. We all kind of thought he would be a first-round pick. It didn't happen for reasons that we found out later. If he's healthy for a position that you sort of get production by default in that linebacking crew, just the way they run things, he could be a monster for him. So I think it's great value in the third round.
Austin.
Yeah, I like Dean. I think the Eagles are excited about him coming and joining on their defense, and definitely excited about where they got him in the draft. I mean, you heard, Howie Rosen talking about how high they had him rated on their board before the draft. Now, why they didn't just take him there, I don't really know. But several teams passed on him, and I guess it's the injury concerns. But when you look at him as a player, he's got some really great qualities. His speed and things do kind of concern me. Him as an athlete, he's not like an elite athlete, but he's still a very good linebacker, and he was very productive. And I believe in him, in the NFL. I actually was looking at him with the 3-1. I decided to go Ritter because, again, I just thought I'll take the best player available. And I thought that was Ritter. And a lot of guys are down on Ritter. Not me.
Hey, Ritter said he's going to win them a Super Bowl. I mean, you can take that to the bank, right?
Speak it into existence.
He named it, claimed it, and he's going to do it. I mean, he's just got to get Mariota out of the way, but there's something there. And and the kid took a Cincinnati team that people weren't thinking as a playoff team. He took them to the playoffs. I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due. And I think that offense could be good for him. We'll see, and all the folks in chat, we do appreciate the comments. We will get to them as soon as we're through kind of this main section, closer to the end here in a little bit. We definitely will answer all your questions, though. Kraig?
I have a question, actually.
Who has a question?
I do.
Oh, well, what's your question?
So we sort of talked about this in our own little team chat, but do you feel, I saw you taking Quay there at the 4th, which I think, for where he was drafted, that's a great place to take him. But short term for people, do you think that they're going to end up utilizing 2 linebackers a lot more? Because, the past few years, that defense has sort of been 1 inside linebacker, edge guys, defensive backs, and their 3D linemen for the most part. So do you see that changing now?
I'm not sure. I think Campbell's probably still going to be the LB1 there, the guy who runs the defense. However, I like Quay Walker. I like his game. And the reason that I went with him is I think that what he brings to that defense is so different than what Campbell does. Campbell's the enforcer. He does fly around the field and do some things, but he's not really a guy that they're going to send off the edge or anything like that. They're going to try to keep him in the middle of the defense and let him do what he does best. He's actually pretty good in coverage, so they can match him up well like that. But Quay Walker is the type that he's going to get after the quarterback. He's the type of player that I think has the physical tools and skills to get to the quarterback off the edge. So I think that they could potentially move him around that defense to where he's not like the middle linebacker of that defense, but move him around and use him creatively to his strengths. And that's why I've drafted him so high, is I love the athlete and the player. And I think he actually landed in a really great situation. He may play a little more out of position, I guess you could say, compared to what he did in college. But I definitely could see Green Bay using him. I think they showed that with the draft capital that they gave him, to say, yeah, we want this guy on our defense, and they recognize he's a very good player.
So, with that being said, I wouldn't argue that. I do think Quay Walker is probably the most athletically talented of their linebackers, at least currently what they've got. I think Campbell still is kind of the leader in the clubhouse at this point. Kraig, you asked the question, so what's your thoughts on it? And why did you ask the question?
Well, again, because historically they haven't been using 2 of those linebackers, that position on the field at one time. They're both sort of that inside linebacker. Campbell just got 5 years, $50 million. I think there's like an out maybe after 3 years or something. So they're paying him big money, and then you take a 1st-round pick and you use it on an inside linebacker. Could they use him at edge? I guess he could develop into something like that. He has the size certainly to do it. I don't know that he really has the skill set necessarily. That remains to be seen. But the Packers like building on strengths. Their defense was actually rated better than their offense last year, and I think they're trying to see, with Rodgers going towards the end of his career here, are they going to be able to pull off having a much better defense and then, maybe a slightly less efficient offense? It's an interesting gamble on their part, and I don't quite know, but I just don't like it for fantasy right now. In Dynasty, I think he's a fine pick, but redraft, I don't have any interest in drafting Quay Walker.
Yeah, redraft is a whole nother animal when it comes to IDP redraft leagues, which this is not an IDP redraft mock draft. This is just Dynasty, just for anybody who may be just jumping on. But you have to approach those very differently. And a guy, and most of these rookies outside of probably the top 3 to 5 in a redraft probably are not, guys that you're targeting super early. So it's interesting to see how they're so significantly different. But we have seen quite a bit of happenings in the 3rd and 4th round. Anderson from Atlanta, he's a guy that Austin, I want you to talk about how you feel about his value there, how you feel about him in that Atlanta defense. Give the viewers at home some opinions on what you think about that.
Hang on a minute. Where are we going with this? Who is it? Anderson.
Rookie linebacker from
I got
Atlanta.
you, Troy
Anderson. Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was.
Did you want me to give you his full name,
like,
middle initial?
Yeah. No, yeah. I like it. I think that defense needs a lot of help, and I think they're going to get that this year with the draft that they had. Troy Anderson should be an integral part of that. They just moved Luquan out of Atlanta, so that should free up plenty of snaps for him. I think he's a pretty good player, and I think he got a really great landing spot. Defense last year, I think, finished I think I read somewhere where they were 10 sacks less than the next lowest team. So even if they had 10 sacks more on the season, they would still be the fewest sacks in the entire NFL. So they're going to have to find ways to get to the quarterback. Troy Anderson plays fast. He has the ability to do that, I think, but he should be a guy that could rack up tackles and should be a guy that gets a crack at getting a starting job there right away.
Well, in that team, that I think people are probably going to overlook them because of what happened last year. But their defense is really not as bad as it was last year. I mean, they've made some interesting moves. Kraig, talk about that Atlanta defense and how you feel about their offseason and kind of what you anticipate from an IDP perspective.
I think outside of Deion Jones this year, there isn't a one of them that I have a whole lot of interest in for linebackers. They brought in Anderson, who I really like. He's, athletically amazing, and I think he's going to have a learning curve coming from Montana State going to the NFL. They signed Rashaan Evans to a 1-year deal. They have, I think it's Michael Walker, who played well last year in spot starts towards the end of the year. So what's that going to end up panning out to be? I don't really know. They could shown they're able to support 2 guys, and they probably will, but it's going to be Deion Jones and then whoever game to game. So Dynasty, I'm all over Troy Anderson. Redraft again, which unfortunately with this draft class, I feel like that's pretty much everyone. There's maybe 5-6 guys near the top that I'd have interested in taking in a redraft, but beyond that, no. I don't know the rest of their draft picks offline, so I will see if I can pull that up here, but I don't recall it being a huge IDP draft. They took the edge player, which is that Arnold. I think he got taken up here.
Ebiketie. Yeah, he went in the 3rd round.
Again, edge really hasn't been a very productive position for the Falcons. So, what are they going to be doing with that defense? They've had Grady Jarrett, a defensive tackle. He has like a year or 2 maybe left on the contract. There's been talk of moving him. They're trying to rebuild that whole team on the fly. And I think you can find pieces that are productive. I just don't like them for this year. Long term, depending on how they use Ebiketie, certainly, but really haven't seen a lot of productive edge players out of that Falcons defense recently.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how they develop. I mean, they made some wise IDP draft picks, but they still have a long way to go. I mean, I definitely think they're going to be interesting there in the NFC South, especially because outside of Tampa, that NFC South is wide open. So if they can, get some of these young guys to produce maybe at a level that's stronger than, where they were last year, then they could really push for, second in the division. I mean, depending on how you feel about Carolina. I mean, New Orleans is always tough, but the quarterback situation, does everybody feel like Jameis is going to be healthy and make it happen? Maybe. Otherwise, who knows? This draft was definitely interesting, and I do want to preface, I've had a couple MFL drafts already, so be careful, folks, when you're drafting, because MFLs, ADP and all their stuff, I had a lot of people messaging me about what's the best way to draft on here, because ADP hasn't been updated or any of that stuff, and you're kind of having to dig through pages worth of guys. Same as on Sleeper. Sleeper still has things that, they're updating like most of these sites, but they're not, they're not there yet. So make sure you take your time. And obviously these picks were, 2 minutes a pick, and we were going through it, pretty quickly. I mean, your leagues are not going to draft that quick, but just be mindful. Make sure you're looking because, for me personally, Tyler Allgeier's a guy I have early second round as a guy that I'm targeting there. And I didn't even notice him at pick 212 when I took Thibodeau. But then as I saw the board and I was looking at what happened, I saw he was still sitting there. I was like, oh, well, at the end of the third, I got to go get him, So I think some of that will happen in your drafts because I've seen it happen at least in the 2 rookie drafts I've had so far where somebody went, oh, I didn't even realize he was still available, So just be careful when you're drafting. Take your time. Don't rush. Don't rush the card up like my Detroit Lions. Make sure you know exactly what you're going to do, although they do. Go Lions. So Austin, I'll give you the first shot. What do you think about this draft? I mean, look at the teams and where they drafted and the IDPs that got drafted. How do you feel about it as we wrap up the draft portion and get to the QA?
Yeah, so one guy that I saw in here that's pretty interesting pick is Jalen Petrie. I was surprised to see him go ahead of every safety except for Kyle Hamilton. We've fallen in love with Jalen Petrie and his landing spot. I know that, and it is a good one. But I think Lewis Cine, I think it's Cine, kid from Georgia, safety from Georgia.
Went to Minnesota.
Thought he got a really great landing spot in Minnesota and would probably be my second safety overall. But I am intrigued by Jalen Petrie. I'm not knocking the pick. I actually don't hate the player. I had him ranked pretty high on my rankings as well. But I thought it was peculiar that he went there at 311. And I think that's a little higher than I've seen him go. But I don't hate the pick. I'm intrigued by it, actually. So, Kraig, what do you think about that pick in particular?
I think if whoever's drafting doesn't have a whole lot of faith in the Texans defense, which certainly is rebuilding, and that linebacking core, it makes a lot of sense. He's a guy that sort of rose up quickly towards the end of the draft, like the real NFL draft, pre-draft time, and then got taken with good draft capital. So they're clearly high on him, and they certainly need defensive back help. They lost Reed. I think they traded Lonnie Johnson Jr. to the Chiefs too. Mm-hmm. So, they've had a lot of moving parts there, which is understandable with a new front office as far as last year and then just trying to rebuild it. There's certainly a certain type of player that they're looking for in terms of character that they haven't been shy about there in Houston. So they must feel that he fits the bill and will fit with them long term. So, yeah, again, if you don't really have faith in that linebacking core and they don't really have a whole lot of young linebackers, they have Harris that I think Brad took at the very end of the draft was a guy they took. But most of these other guys, I think they have Eric Wilson, who bounced around last year. Christian Kirksey had a really nice year for him, but he's been dinged up a lot through the latter half of his career, and he's an older guy. And most of them are just on one-year deals, too. So I certainly understand why someone would be high on him.
Yeah, I mean, and not just shout out to my boy Nathan. I do love the Texans draft this year for fantasy. I've been targeting Pierce, Harris, Petrie. I mean, basically anybody that drafted because I think Lovie Smith is a good roster, can build a good roster, and a lot of the guys they drafted this year, I could make the case that they could get significant playing time earlier than some of these other guys. I mean, they have a lot of opportunity, and when you think about on the offensive side, a guy like Mechie, the wide receiver core is not bad. They got Cooks and Nico Collins. Mechie is a really intriguing guy who's coming back from injury, but could see him not getting double covered where some of these other guys that were drafted earlier, think of the Christian Watsons of the world, the guy I took, he could quickly move into like the number one receiver role and have to face one or two guys at the next level that, he was facing lesser competition where Mechie's maybe facing a team's number 2 or number 3 corner, things like that. I mean, and even, Petrie and Harris, I can make the case that those guys are both day one starters that are giving you significant playing time, which could turn into significant fantasy production. In my mind, I want to take a shot on that and see what happens, especially in your leagues where you're starting, even based on what we did, 2-2-2 and a flex, those are still potential depth startable pieces that you're getting, later in your draft. So I don't hate it. Kraig, anything that stood out to you, good, bad, or otherwise in this draft?
So I didn't mean to go no defense in this draft. It kind of the antithesis.
You hate IDP. You already said that.
Yeah, of course. But we do have combined offensive defensive rankings over at rotoheat.com. I think it's a top 100 that we did in my mind.
On rookies we do 100.
But so you can find, and I tried to stick to my draft board to make this as realistic. And a lot of guys that I had some interest in as far as the IDP end went earlier than I would have taken them, not by a lot, but you know, I would advise people, generally speaking, to try to stick to their draft board if they have one, and not just go all willy nilly. If you enjoy doing that, have at it. But have a plan usually helps out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I have a board and I don't always stick to it. For me, it's what does my team need and how does that line up with my board? Sometimes that can vary for me, which isn't always a great thing. Sometimes that's caused me to make stupid decisions. But typically, more often than not, it works out well. Last year I won quite a few of my leagues. I don't feel so bad about it. But in the end, I always tell people, make sure you're happy with not only your draft, but your roster. If you're not happy with it, then fix it, and so even if, and I don't know, this may lined up with my rankings. It probably didn't, but it could have. I felt good about the players I took, where I took them. I mean, the Harris pick at 412, I kept going back and forth. I saw Lewis Seen out there, and there's other players that I would have had no problem taking here, but it's like, why not? I liked his upside potential because of where he went. So,
yeah, I mean, you could have switched our picks on. Well, I could have taken your 312 and 412 at the 3-1 and 4-1.
Let's get it.
Been perfectly happy with that. So, I mean, you getting those players there. You snaked me on Tyler Algier, by the way. I love Tyler Algier this year. But even Harris, yeah, I wish I would have probably drafted him instead of Quay Walker, just to clarify for the stream.
Yeah. And another team I want to point out, I mean, obviously everybody heard that the Jets had a great draft, but Jermaine Johnson, the edge guy that they grabbed at 411, I would have taken him at 412 if he would have been there. This is a really dynamic guy, a really good athlete that I think they'll have a great idea for even early as an edge rusher, kind of go get the quarterback guy. And for those leagues where you get extra points for or sacks or forced fumbles or things like that, he could be a really intriguing later guy to take a shot on, just because I think Robert Saleh will have a really, really good idea of what to do with him and get him involved in the rotation early on. And that also depends, right here we have him listed as a linebacker. I don't know if that's going to be what he is. Is he a linebacker? I don't know that. So I would love to see him with his hand in the dirt, quite honestly, in New York. But Kraig tends to be the all-seeing eye of where guys' positions are going to be, because I don't always. So, Austin, what do you think about Johnson? What do you think about what the Jets are doing there in that defense? And do you think he has potential, or was it just a late round whatever pick?
I like the player. And I'm just not certain of the landing spot. I mean, if he's just on the field, he's going to be able to make plays. He's an incredible player. And I'm curious to see where they line him up as well. Does he have the athleticism to line up at outside linebacker? Probably. But I'm kind of with you. I think what he does best is, pass rushing. And so I would probably see if he would be a DN, but this is important too, especially if you've got guys if they have Johnson listed as a defensive end in sleeper, or if he's got dual eligibility for D end and linebacker. I always give a boost to those players that get that dual eligibility, especially if I know they're a linebacker hybrid type player that's going to perform and produce in those positions, and they get that D end and that D line eligibility. Man, that's a huge boost.
All right.
He could be a candidate for dual eligibility, by the way.
Well, he certainly could. It just all depends. And I want to wrap this up so we can get to the Q&A portion, but I do, for those that are going to listen to this as podcasts format, I do want to just point out quickly that we saw IDPs come off the board middle of the second round, which is typically, in most years, that's where you're going to see IDPs go. In the order that we see them go in this mock draft, it was Devin Lloyd from Jacksonville, then Aiden Hutchinson from Detroit, Kyle Hamilton, Baltimore, Kayvon Thibodeau, Nakobe Dean, Trayvon Walker, George Karlaftis, Arnold Ebiketie, Troy Anderson, Jalen Petrie, Quay Walker, Jordan Davis, Jaquan Brisker, Jermaine Johnson, Christian Harris. That is through 4 rounds. Obviously, IDP drafts typically go a little longer, 5, possibly 6 rounds. There are some names that we didn't call. If you are listening in podcast format, we do love and appreciate the ratings, reviews, all that good stuff. Show the people that run those platforms that you enjoy what we're doing. With that being said, we do thank you guys. This is where we're cutting off the main part of the show, and we're going to get some Q&A. So if you hear this in audio format and you want to see our beautiful faces and jump in and post comments and roast us or help us understand proper saying and pronunciation of names, we do love it. We're on YouTube Monday nights. Tuesday nights, we got the Dynasty show, and then Thursday nights, I run a Devy show with Dez. Join us. Like, subscribe, do all those things. And with that said, we're done. We're going to get some Q&A, though. Thank y'all. All right, so Q&A it is, and we have some Q&A. So thank you guys for dropping comments in the chat. This one's more of a just talking about his draft, but we want to pull it up. John McGrogan. Hopefully I didn't butcher your last name, my friend. He's halfway through his 12-team Superflex tight end premium IDP draft. At the 102, he took Burks, 104 Wilson, 102 Burks, 104 Wilson, 105 Kenneth Walker, 27 Bell, McBride, Tolbert, Corral. So he didn't take any IDP yet. How dare you not take any IDP yet? I'm sure. No, I don't know. So far, so good. That's a good draft. I mean, those are all quality players, getting a top tight end. The Tolbert pick, I don't know. Craig, how do you feel about the Dallas receiving core? Is Tolbert a guy? Is he the next Cedric Wilson, or do you think he has some value there?
Well, I mean, Cedric Wilson had value, so I certainly think that he could have value. They used three wide receivers a lot. We saw that when they were all healthy. That was sort of the problem last year. But they're going to have Lamb. Gallup's still coming back from injury. They have James Washington, which we haven't seen a whole lot of consistently throughout his career. So is he going to be the number 2 there? Well, Gallup's getting healthy. Can Tolbert earn a role? I think it's probably going to end up sort of being Gallup, Tolbert, and Lamb when all 3 are healthy in mid-season or beyond. So I do like him. He's a guy probably going to have towards the end of your bench, not a whole lot of use consistently throughout the year, but especially if Gallup doesn't recover very well, I think he could be pushed into a role if he's ready much earlier than people are thinking.
I like it. All right. So, Austin, this one will go to you. Looks like John McGrogan's all over the place. He's in Facebook community. He's on YouTube. Does Devin Lloyd's landing spot concern anyone? Jacksonville signed Olakun, also drafted Walker, Muma, as well as any other linebacker they have on the team. Thoughts, comments, concerns? What do you think there, Austin?
I'm not making a player comp, but I would say if the name wasn't Devin Lloyd and it was Darius Leonard, would we be concerned? Devin Lloyd, my point is Devin Lloyd is the best player in this list, I believe. Oluokun is an excellent linebacker, huge fan of his. I own him almost anywhere I can. I'm not sure that I like the move for Oluokun as much. Now, if I was going to pick a guy out of this list, it's probably Muma, who gets the, Muma and Walker are obviously like the back of the line, but Oluokun probably takes a hit by getting Devin Lloyd landing in Jacksonville. So no, for me, I'm not concerned with Devin Lloyd's landing spot. I like the defense that they run. I like the way that he fits that defense and the things that he'll be able to do. He's going to be the playmaker on that defense. He's going to be the guy that's going to give you the best return on that defense. So for me, no concern.
So the question I have is, we know Doug Peterson is running this team. His defense didn't produce a lot of really sexy linebackers in Philly. Craig, is there any concern with Doug Peterson coming over and what he's going to do with Jacksonville, or are you in the same boat as Austin where it doesn't matter? This man is going to ball out.
It's Jacksonville, so there's always some room for concern. How much you want to weigh into that. Jacksonville fans, it's a mess franchise still. Getting rid of Urban Meyer was a great idea, but he also hired him in the first place. And you have an ownership group, Khan and his son and whoever else is involved there, that seem to not have football be the priority, which is fine. It just makes figuring some of this stuff out a little bit harder. I think Lloyd's upside is capped, certainly with what they have there for other linebackers. Until we see it play out that he's the guy, he's the stud on the field. I'm trying to think who they had. They had someone there with Miles Jack before, and it wasn't Schobert. name is.
Well, I mean, they drafted Caleb Von Chase on, and I think they tried to use him in some different roles.
I don't remember who they had with Jack before. They've been able to have more than one fantasy relevant sort of, linebacker, not edge type guy before. So do I think both Oluokun and Lloyd are going to be fantasy relevant? Yeah, I do. But, Foy showed himself to be a competent IDP linebacker in Atlanta with the same sort of mess of a defense around him, playing next to Deion Jones. So I think it'll probably end up being something similar to that, but which way it goes, I don't know that we're really going to know for year one. Long term, I think Lloyd is a nice piece if they figure out that team in general. But the immediate upside, I think, is capped.
Well, and I think, and I do appreciate Timothy's comment. I think Oluokun, because of the contract, he obviously is going to be significantly involved.
Yep.
And when they do, nickel packages where you have just two linebackers, it's probably Oluokun and then whoever is the next man up for them, whether it's Walker or Devin Lloyd. The interesting thing is what they wind up doing with Walker. If this team, because I've looked into trying to understand Mike Caldwell's defensive scheme and how it's going to mesh with what Peterson did in Philly. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they put on the field in terms of how often they're in a 3-4 look or 4-3 look as to what they do there. I got to think that Chad Muma gets himself in the conversation at some point in probably year 3, I would guess. Once, some of these other players are on their way out, because we all like Muma pre-draft. Obviously, we thought it was kind of a weird spot when they drafted Lloyd already and Trayvon Walker. But I think, it's Oluokun and then whoever the next, guy who knows the scheme best. Think about all the players they've got. Shaq Quarterman, they picked up Arden Key in free agency. They have a lot of linebackers, so it's kind of the whichever one wins out that spot next to Oluokun in those sub packages, because most teams are in sub packages more often than they're kind of their base formation anymore. At least last time I looked at numbers, see a lot of nickel dime packages, things like that. So I think it's interesting. I don't necessarily know which linebacker I like the most because they drafted Walker at 1 and then Devin Lloyd later. I think they're both going to get ample opportunity, but and he's a big Georgia fan. I got to pull Timothy's other comment up before we go to Evan's comment. Big Georgia fan. Trayvon Walker dropped out into coverage often. Something to keep in mind. So, they picked him at the 1 spot, so you got to think they have to want to get him involved on the regular. What that looks like will be interesting to see because of what that team's going to be doing. And Oluokun is the big money guy, so they're going to get him involved too. Thank you, Timothy. Great comment, man. I do appreciate you jumping in there, and having a Georgia fan is always a good thing because you know that team probably better than most because you love them. Evan Smith, post-draft, wondering how'd y'all rank these DBs in redraft and dynasty? Javon Holland, Kyle Duggar, Xavier McKinney. I think that's kind of the order for me. Probably in dynasty for sure. Redraft, I think Duggar, man, I really liked what Holland was doing as the year went on. Kraig, what do you think? I'll go with you first on that.
For dynasty, I have Duggar and then Holland 8 and 9. So flip a coin on sort of who you like more. They're right next to each other. McKinney, I have like around 17, just that we haven't seen much out of him. I think he's going into his 3rd year, but 2nd year playing because he was hurt, I think, all of his 1st year. And I don't really know what they're doing in the Giants' 2nd year. McKinney should be a starter and get regular playing time, but they've actually cared about trying to improve that linebacking core, which is part of what made their safeties really useful. So I have them, again, a little bit behind them, but still I have them all as top 20 safeties. And dynasty redraft is probably about the same for those guys because they all have opportunity. They're all going to probably see the field quite a bit. From what we've seen out of Holland and Duggar, mainly last year, because Duggar hadn't played a ton as far as a starter before last year. I like them both, the top 2 guys.
Austin.
Yeah, I think I probably have Holland ahead of Duggar just slightly as well. And then I like Xavier McKinney more in his 3rd year than his first 2. He should get more opportunity to get a higher snap count. I think his first 2 years he was kind of competing with some other guys. Jabril Peppers was there when he wasn't hurt, and then they had I can't think of the older guy that they had. I'm losing his name. Anyhow, they had a really good safety there that got a lot of playing time, who was very annoying to me.
Logan
because
Ryan?
Yeah, Logan Ryan, the older guy that just always seems to hang around. He's like a gnat. Very good IDP player and very good NFL player in real life. They kept him on the field a lot, and I think that suppressed some of Xavier McKinney's snap counts and some of his effectiveness. But in year 3, he should have an opportunity to increase in those areas and should be more productive. But I think I still have him behind those two for sure. Holland is, I think he's pretty handily my number 1 on that list.
I don't ever want to say pretty handily, just because I don't. It's hard to truly say. Duggar we liked a lot pre-draft. I liked Holland a lot pre-draft as well. McKinney I wasn't as high on, but I think they all still have really strong opportunities to be fantasy producers. I would probably go with, the order I originally said. Now that I've had time to think about it, so Evan, hopefully that helped you out, my friend. I just posted the link to our Discord server if anybody wants to jump in and chat. We have chats for literally everything from IDP Devi to movies, TV, and music. Whatever you want to talk about, we got a channel in there. So we want to keep hitting some more of these questions. And I got to hit one of my large OGs. So Jacob, I am in leagues with, plenty of leagues at this point, and he wants to know why my favorite Dynasty League. What is my favorite Dynasty League and why is it large? So we have I'm in a 32 team IDP league, and it is glorious for those of us that are active in the chat. We have a good time, and we typically get a lot of ball busting going on. He wanted me to take live calls on the show just so he could jump on and bust our balls live on call. And no, you got to comment just to bust our balls. So it's a good group. I do love some of the leagues I've been in for multiple years now with guys that just have a good time and enjoy fantasy as much as I do. It is always nice to find other degenerates like ourselves. Speaking of awesome people, Anthony, and I know Anthony, we've talked to before. I know he's jumped on recently and done some things with us. So I do appreciate Anthony's comment. How do you guys think Nakobe Dean will fare with coverage against tight ends? If he's too small or struggles in coverage right away, he could find it hard to serve as a 3-down linebacker, inside linebacker. Kraig, I'll go to you first. I know Kraig and I both like Nakobe Dean quite a bit, so I'll probably agree with Kraig most likely.
I think the size certainly is a concern when you look at overall the size of most NFL tight ends is, sort of growing to these large basketball type players that know how to use their body to get in position, go get the ball with a huge wingspan. So I could certainly see that be a possibility. But the way that the Eagles have used their linebackers, I think they could also just sort of have him as a guy that's paying more attention to the running back and going out after them. He's, crazy athletic. He's always in position. He knows where to go. It really is just the health and sort of the size issues for him. So we're going to have a good idea of how that works out if he gets first team reps going into the season, because they have a nice group of large tight ends there in Philadelphia if he's able to hold his own. So that's what I'd be paying attention to going into the season.
Austin.
Yeah, I mean, his cover skills were never really his strong suit as a prospect. I mean, yeah, he could do it, but he wasn't great at it. That's certainly why he wasn't my number 1 linebacker. But I think he's a great player. I mean, whether or not he's too small, I kind of agree with Kraig. Like, you see a lot of these tight ends who are almost like, they're not like a traditional tight end. They're not in there blocking as much. They're flexed out wide. They're guys who can go up and have big wingspans, go get the ball, and athletically are just more gifted than what we've seen in the past. And so, yeah, it's probably a matchup nightmare for Nakobe Dean, and you got to hope the Eagles just don't put him in that kind of position where he's doing that kind of thing, because that's just not playing into his hand. It's not a strong suit. So, yeah, Nakobe Dean should be a guy who's just constantly looking for the running back and constantly looking to stop the run.
And in my mind, Dean was probably one of the smarter linebackers in college last year. I think the mental side of things will be an edge for him, especially in the type of defense that Philly typically runs. I think he won't have a problem picking things up, and I think he's physical enough to make an impact and be able to take on bigger players, because he, at least from what I observed, he takes good angles. He's a pretty sure tackler, and I think that'll benefit him, because in my mind, and I'm a big Steven Tulloch guy. I'm a Lions guy, and I followed him at the Titans and the Lions, and it doesn't matter your size if you put it all together and work harder and are football smart, I mean, you can make up for some of those deficiencies. So hopefully he bounces back from that injury quick and can get on the field and get the reps so that he has the opportunity to show people what he can do. And to Timothy's comment, Quay Walker usually covered tight ends. Nakobe Dean usually covered the middle of the field and the running backs. He should have no problem doing what he's done in college at the next level, especially because Philly's scheme, is pretty linebacker friendly. I mean, they've been able to use and utilize linebackers who really weren't high quality players. I mean, they were later round guys or UDFAs as well. I mean, I think Nakobe Dean should have no problem stepping in and being a difference maker early on. Back to Jacob. What are your thoughts on Zach Pascal? I'm hoping this ain't a joke. So he's number 4 on Philly's depth chart, 5 on Philly's depth chart behind.
He's not 1 or 2. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I'm about saying with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. So I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy. He produces well for fantasy, but I just don't. He now has 2 really elite wide receivers in AJ Brown, and I was a big Devonta Smith fan, so I put him in that category even if he isn't there yet. And then you have Quez Watkins and Zach Pascal's in the mix. Off the top of my head, I can't even think of what their other receivers' names are. Jalen Reagor, right? Jalen Reagor was a former first-round pick that Rick and I love that flopped so far.
Goddard's their tight end.
Yeah, I mean,
thrown to the running back.
Anybody outside of the top 2, a tight end and a running back, I mean, it's going to be hard to really get any fantasy production or fantasy love for him, right?
He's a fine sleeper if that's what you like him for, but I wouldn't be rushing out to draft him or spend a whole bunch of free agent dollars on him.
Get the smelling salts because he might continue to stay asleep. We'll see. All right, Nick Bosa or Aaron Donald, choose one for IDP. I'm probably going Bosa just because of the age, just because he's younger, but Aaron Donald's, really, can you go wrong? Austin?
I think I like Bosa better, not just because of the age, but just for dynasty. I would probably go Bosa. If you're in redraft, it is more of a toss-up for sure, where you could probably go either one. I mean, Aaron Donald is he's just a monster. He just can't be stopped. It was a little concerning to me, like after the Super Bowl, how there was talk and there wasn't a whole lot of pushback from Aaron Donald's camp or him personally about the retirement rumors and all of that. Like he didn't just come out and put those to rest. So that was kind of concerning to me. Like I wonder, how he's holding up physically and mentally. How committed is he to the game now? I mean, not questioning his commitment per se, but I'm just like, how do you not put rumors like that to bed immediately when they come out? So it's just kind of concerning to me. So I don't know. I would probably say Nick Bosa for dynasty and then redraft, whichever way you want to go. I don't have a problem with it.
Kraig?
Redraft, I'm going to stick with Aaron Donald until the wheels fall off. I wouldn't fault you for taking Bosa, but just based on the age discrepancy thing, Bosa's 24, might be turning 25 this year. Aaron Donald is turning 31 this month. So dynasty, I think it's much more clear.
Mm-hmm. All right. So hopefully that helped you out. Brian, welcome, my friend. Seattle sleeper in the middle. Cody Barton, a lot of vacated tackles. I think he's definitely one of those guys that you can target because, what are they doing? I mean, they're going to have to lean on that defense, and Cody Barton's right there with, Brooks, Jordan Brooks, and the kid from the Chargers they brought over, Uchenna Nwosu.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Barton probably is the best tackler of the group of those 3. Should see the field probably even in sub packages. I mean, any concern there with Barton? Either of you guys?
No, actually, he's next in my sleeper list of articles coming out this week. So there you go.
Look at that.
Nice.
Spoiler, it already happened. Ryan nailed it before you. All right. So Timothy, good question. Do you think Channing Tindall is a Jerome Baker replacement in the near future?
I don't know if he's a replacement. I think he does things that are way different from Jerome Baker. I am drafting Channing Tindall everywhere that I can, depending on where I can get him. But I've already drafted him, I think, twice in the 3 rookie drafts that I've done. So I really like him as a guy who can come in and be an immediate impact player on a defense that's pretty good. I mean, he's got like some really good talent around him. Emmanuel Ogba's really good. We talked about Javon Holland on the back end. He's really good. Like, they have a good defense. And I think Channing Tindall can carve out a role there, a significant role there, and be productive right away. So I'm not sure if he'll be a replacement for Jerome Baker, but I wouldn't hate it if he was. I mean, he's really good. He was one of my favorite linebackers on film coming into this pre-draft. Like, he was a guy that I tabbed and was like, this guy's really good. And I thought he was one of those guys on that Georgia defense that was underrated, to be honest. He didn't get the same attention that a lot of those other guys did, Jordan Davis and some of the others. So I really liked him. I mean, who knows what they'll do with Jerome Baker. I mean, he's going to want to get paid soon.
Well, and so do you think he's a Baker replacement or a Roberts replacement? I mean, because Baker's a guy they seem to really have wanted to, I mean, they've developed and invested in, where Roberts was a guy that brought him from New England. And I think Tyndall's much more talented than Roberts. Why would you want to let Baker go when you could just slot these two next to each other? No, I don't know if that's what their plan is. I know if you check some of the depth chart sites out there, our lads or whatever, they've got him slotted in behind Baker. But Kraig, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Baker, when they signed him to that contract, their sort of explanation was, he grades out well in coverage, and he did great 2 years ago. And last year, I think, he was like a top 20 linebacker in coverage as well, which is where the NFL is moving to, which is why he sees the field so much for him. So I certainly think that Baker has a long-term spot there. His contract is pretty friendly. It's like $11 and $14 million cap hit. They can cut him after each year after this year without a whole lot of dead cap. So I don't really know that they're replacing him. But to your point about the depth chart, they have a whole bunch of guys that are on cheap contracts or short contracts. They don't really have a whole lot beyond Baker. So, yeah, I'm more with you that I think he's probably going to end up playing alongside Baker, as long as Baker doesn't take a nosedive in his efficiency.
So there you go, Timothy. Hopefully that helps, my friend. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate you jumping on, my friend. Top 5 safeties. So I'm just going to pull up our rankings and show them here, which doesn't help because I clicked the wrong button. All right. So if you look at our rankings over on rotoheat.com, it looks like we've got Derwin James, Jamal Adams, Jeremy Chin, Budda Baker, Antoine Winfield is kind of our top safeties. Hopefully that helps. These would be guys that we averaged out as our top 5. Obviously, ours are probably a little different. As you can see, you can sort our columns depending on which one of us you like more. You can see what our rankings look like. Hopefully that helps. Next question. We'll go back to
that too.
Oh,
if you have questions, because scoring matters a lot for IDP leagues, of course, you can go find out. If you just Google IDP scoring on rotoheat.com, you can find out a link to what sort of scoring we're working with, and we're sort of considering that.
Yep. We list our kind of official RotoHeat IDP scoring that we talk about and use in all of our rankings. So, all right. So it looks like last question also from, and I hope I'm going to get this name right, the Plowboy Podcast. Hopefully I got that right. If I didn't, my bad, dude. All right. Does Darius Leonard bounce back this season? Who would you take over him in IDP? Tevin White? Austin, I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of year did Darius Leonard have? It didn't feel like he had a bad year. Was he injured?
He was down a little bit.
Yeah.
Depending on where you looked, I think he was. Well, now I'm gonna have to pull it up and look just to be. I don't want to say it wrong, and somebody call me out for it. So let's see your top defender.
I mean, who would I take over him if we're talking? I mean, does TJ like Roquan? I personally like Roquan better. That's just me personally.
Darius Leonard finished as linebacker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's like linebacker 6. So Campbell, Roquan, Micah Parsons, Olakun, and TJ Watt were above him.
I mean, so there's 3 guys for me personally. It would be TJ Watt, Parsons, and then Roquan. Those would be like the 3 that I would have ahead of him. And then Leonard would be like 4th for me. He's getting up there in age, but like he still does so many things so well. Like he is like if you were gonna build a linebacker and all the things that you want them to be great at, like he's that guy you want to build in my mind. TJ Watt, he's great, but he plays more of like an outside linebacker, edge rusher kind of game.
Yeah.
And like he's still one of my favorite linebackers. I love that we get that eligibility with him and he's got that sack upside. But if you're asking me like is he a true linebacker, would I have guessed that he was a linebacker eligible? Like no. But it's one of the reasons I drafted him in sleeper. Roquan though is another guy who's just a middle linebacker. He's a tackle machine. He does a lot of things extremely well. He's pretty decent in coverage, and Micah Parsons is kind of the same. So like those are the kind of guys that I want. And Darius Leonard, he's not a guy that's like out of that category. He's if you want to make him fourth, I think he'd be fine fourth, but I probably wouldn't push him down any further than that personally.
Yeah, and based on our rankings, we only have 2 guys above him. Although, just looking at mine personally, I've got him as my number 2 linebacker still, just behind Roquan. But it's all super close. I mean, these are all really talented guys. So it's a win-win in my mind. But Kraig, I'll give you the last comment, last thoughts before we wrap it up.
Yeah, so to your point about linebackers, if any sort of league, if you're just doing straight defensive line, linebacker, defensive back, Watt would be a linebacker. But for a lot of us, out here on the show, play with edge positions and stuff broken out, Watt would be an edge. So he wouldn't be eligible if you're talking about linebackers that way. Ahead of White, I have like Watt, if you want to count him that, but Parsons I have ahead of him. I have Roquan, Darius Leonard, so there's probably a handful of guys. The thing that you got to remember, if you look back at Devin White's career year that I had, I think 2 years ago, a lot of that was based on plays in the backfield, sacks and tackles for a loss, which coming from that inside linebacker position is not something that is replicated very often, especially when you have, if you think at that time, JPP and Shaq Barrett, guys that are being paid attention to. And then if you're shooting a guy up the middle, he's probably going to have some success because teams aren't paying as much attention to that. It's a very different Tampa defense right now in terms of they're trying to bring the band back together, but parts of the band are old or wanting too much money. So, replacement players may not be the same. And you're probably not looking at that 2 years ago production again out of Devin White. I still think he'll be really good, especially if Levante David hangs it up anytime soon. There's going to be a huge gap that someone probably can't fill as efficiently as Levante David did. So I do like White. I'd probably have him in my top 10 off the top of my head. I don't know. I don't have it pulled up, but he's probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 range for me.
All right, there you go. So hopefully that helped. Hopefully we have entertained, filled you in with some knowledge, shown you some great stuff tonight. If you do like it, make sure you hit that like, subscribe. You can always hit the notification icon if you want to know exactly when we go live. Like I said a little bit ago, Tuesday night we do Dynasty show. We also are adding a DFS show on Tuesday nights in the evening. I don't think it's this week. I think it's going to be coming quick though. And then Devi I do on Thursday night. So we got a lot of content we drop, a lot of things going on the channel. You can drop into our Discord chat. Guys are chopping it up right now. We have a Facebook community with 3,000 plus people, and it's growing. You can follow us all on Twitter. Here's our handles just below our beautiful pictures. Thank you guys as always. We will be back again next week. Until then, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you later.